So, friends, we have a new release on YouTube. Today we will walk around the Istanbul district of Sultanahmet, located in the European part of Istanbul on the cape between the Golden Horn, the Bosphorus and the Sea of Marmara, and we will talk with you about the ancient and well-known building. It is about the great mosque Hagia Sophia. That is how it is now called. Although earlier this building was a museum, it was originally an Orthodox Christian church. Yes, there are a lot of rumors already on this topic, because we all know that Hagia Sophia is the oldest building of Orthodox believers. After all, once this place was called Constantinople, and it, in turn, was the capital of the Christian Empire, the successor of ancient Rome and ancient Greece, Byzantium. During the Middle Ages, Constantinople was the largest and richest city in Europe. That is emphasized by many facts. But let us talk about how this place has changed and transformed over time. And why, relatively recently, Hagia Sophia again became a mosque, when on July 10, 2020, the head of Turkey, Erdogan, signed a decree cancelling the museum status of Hagia Sophia. That is where time went back again. From now on, here again, like 86 years ago, a mosque. As you can see, in modern Turkey, everything is changing quite quickly. Laws introduced by Kemal Ataturk today are transformed or cancelled. One of these decisions is connected with Hagia Sophia. In 1935, according to the decree of the Turkish government, signed by Kemal Ataturk, Hagia Sophia became a museum. From 1931 to 1948, under the guidance of the American archaeologist Thomas Whitmore, mosaics from the period of Emperor Justinian, whose decree completely rebuilt the burned-out Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, as well as later mosaics of the apse and bema, the southern vestibule, the southern gallery and the northern tympanum. We all remember this story, that after the prayer rugs were removed, the beautiful marble floor of the cathedral was revealed. All this was almost 100 years ago. But first things first. Until recently, everyone was thinking that if prayers were heard again in Hagia Sophia, then the building itself should comply with the norms of Islam. And according to them, a Muslim cannot pray in Christian churches, since there are images of people there. Therefore, most of all the opponents of Erdogan's decision fear for the fate of the unique mosaic images of Christ the Savior, the Mother of God, John the Baptist and angels. But as it became known later, the presidential representative assured that they would be preserved. But as we approach the Blue Mosque and Hagia Sophia, I'll tell you where we are. The long open square we are walking on is a historical site. If you don't know in advance, then it is hard to guess that serious passions once boiled here, riots and uprisings broke out, and the roar of the crowd that gathered here was carried throughout the city. In Byzantine times, there was the famous Hippodrome of Constantinople, the second most important object of the city after St. Sophia Cathedral. The history of the Hippodrome looks something like this. The Hippodrome, where chariot races were organized, was the main and most massive secular institution in Constantinople. In the ancient world, hippodromes, along with amphitheaters, for gladiator fights, and theaters, for performances, were one of the ways to entertain the public, demanding bread and circuses. In many Roman cities, the younger brothers of hippodromes were present, stadiums, for running competitions, but it was in the capitals, that is, in Rome and Constantinople, that hippodromes, also called circuses, were most often built, distinguished by their size and luxury finishes. The Hippodrome of Constantinople was built in 203 in Byzantium by the Roman Emperor Septimius Severus, but under Constantine the Great in 330 it was significantly rebuilt and significantly expanded, bringing its capacity to 100,000 people. In addition to horse races, sports competitions, military processions and festive performances were also held at the Hippodrome. Around the Hippodrome the political life of Constantinople was concentrated, and the clubs of fans who owned chariots were actually competing political parties with which the emperor himself was forced to reckon. Initially, there were 4 groups of fans, which later consolidated into 2. Blue, Venates, and green, Praesens. Confrontation between fans during the races often ended in brawls, and often led to riots. The largest rebellion happened in 532 and was called the Nika Uprising. Then the Veneti and Praesens united against the Emperor Justinian, and during the riots that occurred, most of the city was burned and destroyed. Only by calling on the help of his best commander Belisarius and his loyal troops, Justinian was able to suppress the rebellion, during which about 30,000 rebels were killed on the territory of the Hippodrome. Christianity, having become the state religion of the empire in the 4th century, denounced horse racing as a pagan relic, but was forced to put up with it because of its popularity. The races were not held on Christian holidays, and the clergy were strictly forbidden to attend them, but there are documented descriptions of violations of these prohibitions. Chariot races continued until the conquest of Constantinople by the Crusaders in 1204. The Knights of Christ robbed and in the process of robbery damaged the Hippodrome, which was no longer restored after the expulsion of the Latins in 1261. The main booty of the Crusaders was the famous quadriga, 4 copper horse statues, which once stood on the top of the northern wall of the Hippodrome. If you did not know, now this quadriga adorns the Cathedral of San Marco in Venice. After the conquest of Constantinople in 1453, the Turks used the Hippodrome for about 100 years for mass events, but then they began to disassemble it into building materials for the construction of the Topkapi Palace and nearby mosques, in particular, the Sultanahmet Mosque, which in simple speech is called Blue. The stands of the hippodrome have not survived, but its running tracks and the dividing strip between them correspond to the current long square, which is sometimes called the Horse Square. In the meantime, we are already at the Blue Mosque, better known as Sultanahmet. In the Muslim world, she is also known as Ahmadiyya, and is revered as the main Islamic shrine and symbol of Istanbul. The mosque was created in honor of the 14th Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, Ahmed I, a person significant both for the Turkish nation and for history as a whole. His reign was relatively short, having received the throne from his father at the age of 13. Already at 27 he died of the most severe typhus. However, over the 14 years of his reign, Ahmed I managed to do what many other sultans failed. He is still considered one of the most reasonable and kind-hearted rulers of the Ottoman Empire era, and his policy and period of rule is one of the most positive and bright stages in the life of the state. For example, at the age of 16, the Sultan extinguished the fires that once again engulfed Istanbul with his own hands, and was left with scars and injuries after that. Traditionally, a mosque is a whole complex of various services, which can include not only spaces for services and ablutions, but also a school, a madrasa, that is, a religious educational institution for older students and young men, a seminary, an imarat, that is, a charitable canteen for the poor, hospital, bathhouse, market and so on. This is what happened to the Blue Mosque. In fact, it was a city within a city. The Blue Mosque was created from stone and marble, which is quite natural. Stone is the most accessible rock in the mountainous regions, and the proximity of the Sea of Marmara provided unlimited opportunities for the use of marble. But here we are already walking along the park with Lake Sultanahmet, and then we move towards the famous Istanbul landmark of Hagia Sophia, or as it is already legal to call this building, there is the Hagia Sophia Mosque. Hagia Sophia is a place of pilgrimage for all guests of Istanbul without exception. And this is not surprising. The most ancient temple, which has survived during its centuries-old history, it seems, all possible trials, has retained an incredible appeal and energy. Hagia Sophia in Constantinople until 1453 was the epicenter of the Christian life of the vast region. When these lands came under the rule of the Ottoman Empire, the cathedral was turned into a mosque. For a long time, the cathedral was more of a museum than a functioning temple, but on July 10, 2020, Hagia Sophia again regained the status of a mosque. The building of Hagia Sophia is really grandiose. Power, beauty and former significance do not leave anyone indifferent. The general architectural solution is of a regular rectangular shape, reminiscent of a classical basilica. Only the dome here has a height of 31 meters and a diameter of almost 56 meters. At the corners it is supported by columns almost 25 meters high. The cathedral has 9 gates. The biggest pride of the temple is the preserved unique Byzantine mosaics.
На беззвучный поставь телефон.
But let us visit this mosque. First, of course, a historical background. After Ataturk approved the corresponding government decree in 1934, 50 years later the temple was included in the UNESCO World Heritage List. But as I have said more than once, the State Council of Turkey cancelled this decision of Ataturk, stating that the cathedral is listed as a mosque in the State Register of Real Estate, and this fact cannot be changed. In 2020, Greek government representative Stelios Petsis said that this transformation could lead to a split between Christians around the world and Turkey, and France and the United States also opposed the change in the status of the temple. The French Foreign Ministry put it this way: as a symbol of tolerance and diversity, this place must remain open to all. The Kremlin, in response to Erdogan's initiative, noted that Turkey should take into account the status of Hagia Sophia in Istanbul as a World Heritage Site when deciding whether to turn it into a mosque. For many tourists, including Russians, the cathedral is not only a masterpiece of world architecture, but also carries spiritual value. The head of the Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Kirill, said that the discussion of the issue of changing the status of the cathedral poses a threat to the entire Christian civilization, and to the spirituality and history of Russia. According to him, the transformation of the temple into a mosque will respond with deep pain in the Russian people. UNESCO, in turn, stated that the issue requires international consultations. Turkey itself considers the issue of the status of the museum to be a purely internal affair of the country. In 2020, the press service of the country's president announced that Erdogan would comment in his address to the population on the cancellation of Ataturk's decision and the new change in the status of Hagia Sophia. But let us go inside and see everything with our own eyes. Moreover, the entrance has become free and you do not need to pay for a ticket as it was before, but observance of Islamic traditions is also required. At a minimum, you must take off your shoes.
Вот так.
In turn, Turkish President Erdogan said that the Hagia Sophia, despite the change in status, will be protected as an object of cultural heritage. What Erdogan said in his speech then: under Fatih, that is, under Sultan Mehmed II, who captured Constantinople, Hagia Sophia was accepted in a ruined state, then it was turned into a treasure. For centuries, she was looked after, made her even more beautiful. Despite the change in the status of Hagia Sophia, it will continue to be protected by us as an object of cultural heritage. According to Erdogan, by changing the status of the Hagia Sophia from a museum to a mosque, the Turkish authorities corrected the mistake. Here is a brief quote from Erdogan's speech: "We fulfilled the will of 83 million citizens of Turkey. In 1934 it was turned into a museum. Now we are correcting this mistake. This is our sovereign right." A little later, UNESCO expressed concern about giving the status of a mosque to this monument of the Byzantine era, and asked Turkey to submit an updated status report of the building by February 1, 2022. Turkey, in turn, then rejected the provisions of the report of the Advisory Commission, which do not correspond to the current situation. Then the Turkish politician said, "They appear to have been written for biased and political motives." Turkey will continue to work diligently and meticulously to protect the registered sites on the UNESCO World Heritage List, respecting its rights, powers and obligations.
Я думал, вот за весь процесс, что праздники были. Наверное, за это время.
Well, how much has the building changed in more than 2 years? On the site where the temple is now, for centuries stood the Church of Hagia Sophia, which suffered in a fire in 532. The great Emperor Justinian I, who ruled the Byzantine Empire at that time, ordered the construction of a new cathedral on this site. 5 years later, in 537, the temple was built and inaugurated. For more than 1,000 years, Hagia Sophia has been a famous and significant place for any Christian. Some of the most valuable shrines and relics were lost by the temple as a result of the Fourth Crusade, which took place in 1204. Some of them have disappeared forever. Some are now housed in the Venetian Cathedral of San Marco. Mehmet the Conqueror, who conquered Constantinople, could not destroy the temple. The majestic beauty of the cathedral served him well, and he survived. This happened not only with Hagia Sophia. Many churches and temples of Constantinople managed to take root in Istanbul. It was decided to rebuild the cathedral for the needs of a mosque. To do this, a minaret appeared near the temple, first a wooden one. Later, the new mosque received 3 more minarets. The 16th century brought a lot. The mosque in Hagia Sophia received its own mihrab, which indicated to Muslims where Mecca is located, a place for a muezzin, from where the call to prayer sounds, and a special throne. In the 18th century, Sultan Mahmud I added a library to the mosque. Then, according to Islamic tradition, a special place for ablutions was built in front of the entrance to the temple. The mosque has its own elementary school and office space for the clergy. During the Ottoman Empire, a tomb was created in Hagia Sophia. Sultans and other representatives of the reigning dynasties, such as Mehmet II, Mustafa I, Selim II and others, are buried here. In the middle of the 19th century, the interior of the mosque was also changed by placing round shields with the names of Allah, Muhammad, Hassan, Hussein and the 4 caliphs. Most of the frescoes and mosaics remained intact by the beginning of the 20th century, having been hidden under a layer of plaster for centuries. However, much of the mosaic decoration was irretrievably lost. The opening of the historical design of the interior space was carried out in 1931 by order of President Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. After removing the prayer rugs, the marble floor of the cathedral was revealed. So, after almost 5 centuries of functioning as a mosque, the temple has become the most important attraction of Istanbul and a bait for tourists. Only museum employees were allowed to perform religious rites within its walls. In 2014, however, an active struggle began for the reverse transformation of Hagia Sophia into a mosque. During Ramadan in 2016, the Quran was read in the cathedral. The reading of the Quran was broadcast on TV and caused a negative reaction from the Greek Foreign Ministry. Turkish President Erdogan began to announce his intention to change the status of Hagia Sophia from a museum to a mosque in March 2019. And a year later, the promise came true. Write in the comments what you think about this event. Is Hagia Sophia a museum or should it be a mosque? Or maybe among you there is someone who wants to resurrect an Orthodox cathedral in this place. Comments under the video are open. Write your opinion. And that's where we end our walk. But as a bonus, I will also show you a tunnel under the Bosphorus, which was relatively recently opened in modern Turkey. This is truly an outstanding building. True, the passage on it is paid. In 2016, the Eurasia Automobile Tunnel was solemnly opened in Istanbul, stretching under the Bosphorus. The opening ceremony was attended by the President of Turkey and other dignitaries. Thanks to the new tunnel, travel time between the districts of Istanbul, located on opposite sides of the strait between Europe and Asia, has been reduced by 1.5 hours to 15 minutes. The length of the structure connecting the Istanbul regions is 5,400 meters, and a section of 3,340 meters lies directly under the strait. The very same depth of occurrence goes along the bottom of the Bosphorus. Its depth here is 106 meters. Passenger cars and minibuses move along the tunnel. The fare is different. And the prices are different too. If you have an electronic ticket, then you will travel much cheaper, for about $2. If you do not have it, then the fare will be much higher. The Eurasia Tunnel is one of the few projects in the world that has been able to significantly unload traffic flows. He has relieved traffic very well in Istanbul for the last 6 years. From the Eurasia Tunnel, through which 97 million vehicles have passed since its opening. The tunnel, which is the world's first and only double-decker highway connecting continents, is truly impressive. With the Eurasia Tunnel, whose investment cost is almost $1.5 billion, the residents of Istanbul will save time and fuel. Well, I am ending our tour. Be sure to leave comments under the video, rate, and go to the channel. There are a lot of interesting releases about Turkey, Georgia, Russia and other countries. Good luck to you. See you in future releases. Subscribe.